What's up everybody, it's Jesse from Ion Aesthetics. Thanks for checking back into the channel. Today, we're jumping into the next installment of the Forester detailing series, all right? Really excited for this one because up until now, we've really covered a lot of standard detailing type stuff, right? How to clean wheels and tires, how to wash and detail and clay a car, how to do engine bay detailing, how to take care of the interior. Important stuff, but what I really like doing the most is paint correction, all right? And so today we're gonna dive into this 20-year-old Subaru paint and go over how to remove all these defects. There's lots of swirls and scratches in there. There might be a bit of water spotting, maybe some etchings from bird droppings, things like that. I'll show you how we do a test spot. I'll show you the different variables that you can control to get different results. And I'll go over the actual process itself and finally how to make sure it's all removed too, so that your surfaces are prepped correctly for a wax application or a ceramic coating or a sealant, whatever you decide to do. So lots of good stuff coming up today. I'm gonna pop this camera on the tripod and we're gonna get right to work. All right, so let's start off with some of the basic tools that you need in order to do a paint correction. Now, paint correction and polishing are the two terms you're gonna hear me use interchangeably throughout this, and they mean the same thing, so don't get confused with the terminology. The main thing you're gonna need is a polisher, all right? When you're just starting out, any polisher will do. I've worked my way up to a Rupes. You can get just as good of results with and without this tool. These really only make a difference if you're doing this a lot because the tool is smoother and it's just less toll over time on your body, but any polisher at any budget will do just fine. You're gonna attach a pad to that polisher, all right? And to start off, to keep things simple, focus on one pad and one polishing liquid. So I'm gonna be actually trying these out for the first time today. This is the yellow wool pad from Rupes, all right? It's the 6-inch, which is the biggest one that they make. If you take it out of the package, you'll notice that it has a foam interface and then it has these wool fibers on top. All right, more on pads later. Next, you're going to need your polishing liquid, all right? So this is the Rupes yellow polish. This doesn't have as much of an aggressive cut as their blue coarse compound, all right? Generally, when you hear something referred to as a polish, it's on the gentler side. Something referred to as a compound is gonna be on the more aggressive side, all right? We're gonna focus, like I said, on one polishing liquid and one pad today and go over just the basics of a one-step polish. You're gonna need some microfiber towels, all right? Something in the middle of the pack in terms of weight. You don't want it so plush like a drying towel where it's gonna be a lot to handle. You also don't want it too thin where you could put some scratches into the paint because it's not delicate enough. Something in the mid like 300 to 400 GSM range is what I prefer. And so I've got a couple of those. The next thing, I don't know if I would say it's necessary, but definitely highly recommended, is some type of inspection light, all right? This is just an Amazon, basically like Scan Grip knockoff. So Scan Grip makes some really great tools and some beautiful products, but you're not gonna get any better results because you have their light versus the other one. This one does just fine. They have ones that look like little pens, which you can use too, or they have some that are even on a big, stand that you can wheel around and things like that. Any inspection light will do. This is gonna help you see into the paint when you're inside and you don't have the sun beating down on it. Now that's the other thing. When you're doing paint correction, I would highly, highly advise that you do it indoors, especially if you're not familiar with the process and the different variables, all right? Doing it in direct sunlight, this can be done outside, but there are some things you need to be aware of. So if you have any means to do this inside, it's gonna help you a lot more in the beginning because it takes a really big variable off the table. All right, so we've got all our materials. I'm gonna set up a couple of sections on the hood and mark them off, and we'll jump into the test spots now. All right, everybody, so the tape is down. I've marked off 3 sections for us. And before I start this process, just a quick note about the beginning of the video where you saw me washing and claying the car. make sure your car is clean before you start your paint correction. If you do any type of polishing or paint correction work and there's dirt and debris on the vehicle, it's gonna get picked up by the pad. That pad is gonna push it and swirl it around the paint and cause even more defects. And you'll just end up chasing your tail wondering why you're not getting these defects out. So apply some common sense and make sure that your car is clean before you start this. Now I'm gonna pick the camera up really quick and just show you some labels that I made on these pieces of tape so you have a better understanding of what's about to go down. All right, so I have these 3 sections taped off here and I've got some markings on this tape, so allow me to explain. Here's our first section. I'm gonna do 1 pass with the polisher, which means I'm gonna come down the section, turn around, and go back up, and that'll be 1 pass. We'll check the results and see if we're happy with it. In this middle section here, okay, I'm just gonna do 2 passes. So the same pattern, but repeated. Down and back up, down and back up, and that'll be 2 passes in this middle section here. Now on the third section, all right, you guessed it, I'm gonna do 3 passes. So that down and up is gonna be done 3 times. Down, up, down, up, down, up. And again, we'll compare all the results along the way, and that will help us determine which level of cut and how much time in each section is good enough in order to get the results that we need. All right, so now that we've got some test spots or some test sections marked off, let's prime our equipment. So the first thing you need to do is take your polishing pad and attach it to this backing plate here. It's just simply Velcro, and you want to do your best to make sure that it's centered on here. Easy way to tell is actually by looking on the back, all right? And if you see a bunch of white on one side and then none on the other, then clearly you have a pad that's off-centered, all right? It's a little tougher with these wool pads because you can't see through the hole, but do your best just to line this up. Give the machine a quick spin by hand. Looks like we've got an even white ring all around, and we're good to go. Now, these fibers are gonna help cut old layers of paint off and remove those defects, but they need to be primed properly. And so this process is really simple. All right, we just want to make sure that the pad is coated with some of the polish first before we take it to the paint. All right, now there are some different ways to do this. I'll show you one, and if you do your own research, you might see some others, but just figure out something that works best for you. What I'm going to do here is take my polish, and I'm just going to make this cross pattern here. You don't want to go through the center over that ring, but make these 4 lines here and then spread it in evenly, all right? You can buy these tools from Rupes, which will help spread the polish evenly. You can just use your hand to massage it into all the fibers. Whatever works best for you, but all we want to do is make sure that we get some good coverage here. So I've kind of spread it like a butter knife, all right? And you can see in here, there's some fibers that are uncoated and you can see the ones that are, but making sure that that polish is spread out evenly over all of these fibers is gonna help us get some more consistent and predictable results, all right? That's the one and only time that you need to do this. Now for each application, meaning each section that we're gonna polish on the paint, all we need to do is take our polish and apply 4 little dots, all right? Most detailers, if you've watched other videos on this before, will refer to them as pea-sized, all right? That means whatever it means to you, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. You don't need giant globs of it. You don't wanna just kind of leave it on a, you know, like on a pinhead either. So give it a quick squirt and we've got our 4 sections there. And before we jump into this section right here, let's establish a baseline, all right? This paint is cleaned, and that's about it. Using this inspection light here, it'll basically mimic the sun beating down on the car, and you'll be able to see what the paint actually looks like under some real light, not these, you know, these like square panel lights that are reflecting off my ceiling right now. They're not really good for looking into paint defects the way it would be if you had some sunlight. So I'll switch this on, and I'll bring the camera in close because I'm not really sure how much it picks up, but you could see all throughout the paint this circular pattern of really fine swirls and scratches There's some smudges in there. That little strip there might be from some bug gut residue or who knows, but obviously you can see that this paint is far from perfect. It's over 20 years old. It's never been polished, and it's time to give it the love and care that it deserves. And now with the 4 dots on the polisher, we're going to simply dab it on the paint first and spread it a bit. Now I recommend putting your polisher on its lowest setting and turning it on for just a quick couple of seconds to spread this evenly before we ramp up the speed and begin the polishing process. So now with the polish evenly spread, I'm going to turn my machine somewhere between 3 and 4.5 is typically where I like to polish. All right. The higher the speed of the actual machine and the slower you physically move your hands and arms, the more aggressively you're going to cut. The lower the speed on the machine and the faster you move your arms and hands, the less cut you're going to get, which is typically better for finishing polish. So I'm going to put this right in the middle. When I turn this tool on, I don't really need to lean on the tool, but I also don't want to let it run free. I'm just going to put enough pressure on the edge of this machine to keep this pad flat and the machine stable. And I'm going to do my 1 pass, and then we're going to check the results. So after doing that 1 pass down and back on speed 3 with just some light pressure, I've got my microfiber towel here, and I'm going to come in and remove this polish. All right. Something I like to keep in mind is that I'm removing swirls and scratches that are in this sort of round circular orientation. I don't want to reinstall any defects like that, but anytime you wipe your paint with something, you do run that risk. And so a lot of times you'll see me and many other detailers remove things from the surface with long, straight motions. This way, if I do reinstall a defect like a swirl or a scratch into the paint, at least it's in a straight line and it'll be much easier to correct and remove. Let's get the inspection light back on this section and see how we did. So you could see right away, just that 1 pass has already made this paint look much, much better. Now, could I say it's gotten out 70% or 80% or 90% of the scratches? I'm not really sure. Frankly, I'm not that guy. All right, but I know that already it has made this paint look much better. It's really clear. Most of the swirls and scratches and the defects are gone. And all we really see now is bright blue paint with a bit of that metallic popping through, beautiful gloss, and an amazing reflection. Let's jump into the second section, give it 2 passes, and see if it makes a notable difference. So here's the first section, and here is the second section. Keep in mind, I spent twice as much time polishing this section as I did the first, and I wouldn't really say there's any notable difference, all right? This tells me a few things. Number 1, it really doesn't make sense for me to try another test spot with an additional pass in the section. And that's something really important to realize, is that spending more time polishing the paint doesn't always mean that you're doing a better job. In fact, a lot of times it can mean the opposite. Essentially what I've done in these first 2 sections is I've taken whatever clear coat was there that had some scratches at the very surface, and I've cut some of that clear coat away, and now I have a nice flat top layer of that clear coat. The more time I spend polishing, the more passes I make, the more I remove that clear coat layer and whittle it down until eventually the blue is the only thing showing through. And if I do that, I take away the natural, layer of protection that's sprayed on by Subaru and these manufacturers, and I really risk damaging the paint. Plus, if I burn through all that clear coat in one section and leave it in others, it'll leave behind these really cloudy and terrible looking spots where you can tell someone actually burned through your clear coat. So one important note on this is do what you can in your paint correction process to preserve the clear coat that's there, and then add protection on top of it and fortify those layers and stack it up. The second thing that this tells me is that I do have the right pad and the right polish combo for this paint. If I went through either one of those sections and the defects didn't come out, one of two things could go down. The first option is do that third test section where you have 3 passes and see if spending more time with the same pad and polish combo gets you the desired results. The other option is to change the pad and the polishing liquid. If you find that your test spots aren't delivering the clarity in the paint, well, it's possible you may need to bump up to something more aggressive in terms of your polishing liquid. All right. This blue bottle from Rupes is their polishing compound. They bump up the abrasives in here, so it's more aggressive when it's on the clear coat trying to grind things down. The second variable would be changing your pads, all right? Something like a microfiber cutting pad or the Rupes blue wool. These are more coarse than that yellow pad is, and so the fibers in here may help cut through more severe defects if the car has a harder type of clear coat, all right? But luckily, I don't need to do that today. And so although I'm testing this yellow wool pad out for the first time personally, for a couple of years now, this yellow foam pad has been my go-to. I'm really happy to see the level of cut and finish that I'm able to get. I also really only need to do that one pass, so each section I shouldn't be spending too much time in. A back and forth, and move on, and we'll get through this car pretty quickly. So I'm gonna pull these tape lines up and put the camera behind me, show you guys some polishing sections in real time, and also how to remove the polish effectively. Now that I know my pad and polish combo works and how much time I need to spend going across the paint, the last main thing is how big of a section am I gonna work within. Now, when you have a 6-inch pad and these 4 dots, all right, what I typically like to stick with, and this is the Rupes recommendations as well, is a section roughly the size of 6 of these pads. Easy way to tell is to make 6 dabs. This ends up being a section that you can comfortably cover at arm's length without leaning over the car or without having to go too far outside of a shoulder's width. I'm gonna follow the same procedure as before, dab in my paint, switch it to setting 1, give it a quick even spread, bump it up to speed 3, and then do my passes. So that was a polishing section done in real time. Hopefully you all got a good look at the speed and how much area I was covering. That section, which I would say is about a quarter of the hood, down and back to cover that much area, really only took me about 20 seconds, and then wiping it off. I'm really, really impressed with this yellow wool combo from Rupes. I have been using the yellow foam pads for years and have just gotten really comfortable with how they cut and how they finish. And I knew that the yellow wool would cut through really fast. I'm not surprised by that, but I'll admit I was skeptical in terms of how is it gonna finish? Is it really gonna be clear and not leave any haze or pigtails or polishing marks behind? And let me grab my inspection light again. I mean, this paint is crystal clear. Looks like it was finished with foam. I'm really, really pleasantly surprised by this here. And so I got a pretty good size chunk of the hood done. Here is the before, and there's our after. And I can't imagine it being much better. Look, it's a 20-year-old car, it's a daily driver. There's some things that aren't gonna get fixed. We have rock chips on the hood, and some deep scratches and things like that. But as far as removing all of these marks from its past life, whoever had this before me, washing it improperly, taking it through car washes, all of those signs are eliminated. And this thing is gonna look absolutely fantastic when it's finished. All right, so I'm gonna jump into the rest of the car and get all the painted sections polished. But before I do, I think the last note I would mention for you guys is to monitor your pad and how it's treating the painted surfaces. The more sections you cover, the less you might start to notice that this is removing defects, or maybe the clarity of the finish just isn't as good. And that's because you'll notice these fibers start to fill up with polish and also the dead paint and the bits of clear coat that it's removing. And when that happens, it reduces the effectiveness of the pad to cut the defects and to polish out the finish and make it really beautiful. So there's a few things you can do. One, you can just get a bunch of pads, and when one pad becomes useless, you take it off, you put the next one on, and then you move on with it. The second thing, and not everybody has this, but if you have forced air, all right? You have a compressor, you put that really tight nozzle on it, and you blow this pad out, and it'll get rid of a lot of this compound and polish and old clear coat in there, and it'll bring these fibers back to life. If you don't have that, all right, I recommend getting the Rupes claw tool. One, because it helps you spread the polish evenly and prime your pads, but two, the other end has this little brush here, and so what I can do is brush these fibers and get them to stand up again. Because when they get moist and filled with compound and saturated and they get clogged up with clear coat, they start to lay flat, and that's how they lose their effectiveness. So I wanna make sure that these fibers are standing up and they're ready to, or going down on the polisher, and so they're really ready to get into that paint and cut through everything. So keep an eye on your pad, keep an eye on your polishing results, and then blow out your pads or get a new one or brush them as needed. So maybe you picked this up. When I polished this door right here, I did more than just the one pass that got me really clean results on the hood. After that first pass, I followed up with a second pass in an opposite direction, and that's known as a crosshatch pattern. It's a really popular term that you should get familiar with if you're just starting paint correction or you're trying to learn a little bit more. All it means is that you make one set of passes in a certain direction and then you follow up with another set of passes in the other. And this is to help get better cut ensure that everything gets distributed evenly, and overall that you just do a thorough job of polishing that section. Now, the reason I did it is I realized that just one pass wasn't giving me as good of a result on the hood. And there's a couple of variables you can adjust, like your machine speed, your hand pressure, the amount of polishing liquid. There's a bunch of different things that you can adjust to try and dial in that finish. But for me, typically, it just means adding an extra pass. So I didn't add any more polish in between. I didn't change the pad or do anything. After I made that first pass, I just went over it a second time. Now, my theory is this. When I'm polishing the hood and I'm upright with the polisher, I have gravity pushing the polisher down a bit. And all I really need is that gentle grip to secure the polisher in my hand and keep the pad flat, and I don't really need to lean on it, right? But when I polish a door and it's upright, I don't get that gravitational pull from the pad to the surface. And so I don't always get the same cut and finish that I normally would. And when that happens, it just seems like there's still some swirls or hazes in the paint, or maybe it's just not as clear. Adding that second step, all right, even if it's in a different direction, is just the same as when I was doing test spots on the hood, where if one wasn't enough, doing a second pass, all right? Do you have to do it in a crosshatch pattern? No, but it tends to lead to pretty consistent results if you do. So if that happens to you, all right, and you go from the hood to your door panels or your fenders and you realize, hey, I'm not getting the cut or I'm not getting the finish that I did on that hood, just try a second pass in a crosshatch pattern, and more often than not, it'll work. If it doesn't, wipe everything away, clean out your pad, right, blow it or brush it, and revisit the section with a new application of some polishing liquid and one or two more passes, and you might dial in a different procedure for your doors and your fenders that's different from what you would do on the hood or the roof. So hopefully that bit helps there. It's diving into the weeds somewhat, but those are the nuances of paint correction there. So by this point, I've gotten almost the entire passenger side done, and shortly I'll be going over to the other side and doing that, finishing the roof, a bit on the rear hatch, and then we'll get everything prepped for the coating. All right, the Forester looks sick. 20 years worth of swirls and scratches and water spots gone within just a few hours work. It looks really, really good. I can't wait to get it outside and drive it, but obviously it needs to be protected, and we're gonna save that for the next video. There is one final thing I would suggest doing, and you could say it's the last part of the paint correction or the first part of the ceramic coating process, but either way, this is the point that it needs to be done at. And that's a final wipe down with some panel prep or some type of alcohol solution. The reason we need to do that is there's gonna be some stuff that's slung up onto other parts of the car. There's definitely gonna be a lot of dust. You might notice like random dots here and there. So at the end of your paint correction, we'll go ahead and make sure everything is removed from the surface and the car truly is clean and none of this like residue or polishing oils or anything is left behind. Now to do this, it's just a few simple things. I've got them on the cart right here. I'm just gonna pop the camera on the tripod and we'll dive right into that and then we'll wrap up the video. And like I said, the car's polished. We're ready to do our final wipe down. We need a couple of simple things. First, you need a panel prep. This can be a product that you buy specifically. For example, this one's from Glassparency. It's the same company that makes the ceramic coatings that I use. And so I like to work with products that are designed together. You get some chemistry on your side and things work in synergy. But if you don't want to go out and buy a dedicated panel prep, go get some distilled water, get a bottle of isopropyl alcohol. You can get them at the dollar store, Walgreens, CVS, and mix them together 50-50. So half water, half rubbing alcohol. It'll all do the same stuff, which is basically ensure that oils and residue are removed from the surface, because all we want to have left here is just the clear coat, no dust. no residue, nothing in between. You're also going to want to have 2 microfiber towels. Now these are the same towel, but they have 2 different sides. And I'll tell you why I like to use these. First, I like to use the side that has a bit of a shorter nap to it, or smaller fibers. This just makes it easy to spray the product on and work it over the surface. And the second towel is just turned inside out. This side has some longer fibers, a little more plush. They kind of stand up. They'll come behind and do a really good job of just grabbing anything that might be lingering or left behind, some of the fine dust, any high spots of the product, anything like that, and just do a really good job of kind of drying everything. So similar to what you'll see in the coating video, we got a 2 towel method here, and we're just gonna go around the car, hit all of the paint, hit the glass too, and we'll pop open the door jambs and we'll make sure those are wiped out as well. And that's a wrap on this one. The paint looks amazing. Panel prep got rid of some residue, some streaks, some dust, and the gloss looks amazing. I mean, it's virtually defect free, aside from what you'd expect after 20 years, which is like some rock chips and some dings and dents that you might have seen throughout the video. You know, one thing I always like to remind myself, and I would highly recommend to anybody, is just this mantra of it's paint correction, not paint perfection. It definitely takes some time to learn this stuff, and no matter how good you are, you're never gonna get this 100% perfect, right? And if anybody's looking for that, tell them that the only way they're gonna get that is a paint job, and they probably don't wanna spend that kind of money. But this paint looks really, really good. It's just breathed a whole bunch of life back into the car, and I can't wait to see what it looks like in the sun, especially after it's coated. So look out for that video next. We'll go over the ceramic coating application and how to protect it and the little nuances to look out for so that you can lock in this beautiful finish, and your car just won't look amazing, but it'll have really, really good protection on there as well. If you subscribe to the channel, hit the little notification bell, you'll get an alert when I post that video and you won't miss anything. Leave a comment below this one and a thumbs up if you liked it, or if you enjoyed it, or if you got any value from the video. And look out for more videos in the future, all right? Other than the coating video, I want to go over glass parency coatings and also do some black trim restoration. And that'll pretty much wrap up my intro to detailing series that I've used my Forester for. It's fall here on Long Island, so I've got 3 months before the end of the year, which is crazy to say. But I hope to have all those videos done by then. And I'm happy to say that I have a lot more time to focus on this stuff now, because after 7.5 years of building this little side hustle and managing my other time with my full-time sales job, I don't have that job anymore. I'm officially a full-time business owner, full-time detailer, sole proprietor on Aesthetics. It's been a really long journey to get to this point, but I'm really excited. I'm really grateful for everybody who sticks around and watches these videos and engages. Everybody who supported me at my previous job, you know, my family, my friends, my fiance, anybody along the way who's played a part in this, no matter how big or small. It's really meant the world to me that it's given me an opportunity to focus on something that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about as my, my way that I'm going to make a living from here on out. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you out there. And I don't know, I don't really have much else for this one. That wraps up my rant and my big announcement. I'm going to close this out the way I always do. I'm Jesse from Aesthetics. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.